Oh, hello, I didn't see you there. Welcome to the Lead Society Roundtable. My name is Abe Hunter, and I'm the founder of the Lead Society. And this evening, I'm so pleased to be joined by my dear friend, Heidi Moss Erickson from San Francisco. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, Abe. Thanks for picking me up off the street this morning.
Well, I mean, it's my gift to the world. It's what I do. And we are so pleased to be joined by, this is a first for us on the roundtable to actually have people that do the booking, that do the work, that do the behind the scenes job. We have executive director Barry Kempton of the Schubert Club and director of concerts for Princeton University, Marna Seltzer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's the pleasure is all ours. So where shall we? Let's talk about your Heidi. You take over. I'm just a pretty face
Well,
here.
Abe, I just am always fascinated. We don't often get to talk to sort of the other side of the table of sort of what it takes to run something as big as what you each run and book the talent and what sort of goes into that kind of mindset. So I think I would like to say, like, say you have a blank canvas of a season. Um, is there something sort of that you regularly do to sort of get that underway? That's a big
Who's
question.
gonna start?
Okay, not everyone at once, please. This
Well,
is really embarrassing when we have both guests just clamoring to start. I'm so sorry, Heidi. I didn't mean to put you in the middle of
No,
this.
that's okay. I'm struggling.
I'll jump in to say that it's never a blank canvas. There are a lot of people who are involved. I mean, my title is artistic director, but I have an artistic committee at the Schubert Club of board members and others, and we meet and we talk about artists and programs and ensembles. Um, and of course, we're always, I think Marna will back this up, we're always being sent a lot of information about the kinds of programs of recitalists and ensembles that are being toured at any one time.
Mhm.
So I get this question often when people say, well, how did you find out about this person? I never heard, and I loved their recital, and I never knew. How did you find out? And it's either because I've known about them a long time, or it's because somebody has sent me information. I don't go out on the internet and dig around for the newest singers. So I think we have different series, and you're matching who can come in, and if we have one. We have a recital series of only 5 concerts a year. So if we have one singer and one pianist, then we'll be looking for a string player, and then we'll be looking for something else. So we want some male, some female, and we want some diversity of race. We want lots of variation, so that we don't end up with a season of 5 pianists. So there's always that. I say one more thing, and then I'll pass off to Marna. There are so many fantastic artists and ensembles out there that I always feel spoiled for choice. And it's never a question of, oh, I don't have it, what should we do? It's always a question of how do we make our decisions and choose through different possibilities.
So there must be a big whiteboard or some Excel document where there's moving pieces of who's available when. I mean, that just sounds like a big, wonderful task, but to put
Yeah,
all
I
these.
used to work with Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Now in my little pandemic office, it has to be on a screen with an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that Barry said. I think, it's easy to think that it is kind of season by season, but it's also a very long, drawn out process. I mean, there are artists or musicians that I've wanted to have on the season for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and you're chasing them for whatever reason. Like you said, the availability is a big factor, but how things are routed, and balance is so important. I mean, I find I have a little bit of a little kind of insider track because I started out on the agency side. So I was the person who sold artists to to other presenters at the beginning of my career. So I think that helps a little bit in terms of kind of knowing how to sift through what's coming at us. But I think Barry's right. I mean, I think the hard thing is that it's so hard to say no. And when you do say no, it doesn't mean that it's no forever. It's just no for that one season that is coming together in lots of different ways for lots of different reasons. I mean, there are just so many there are so many reasons that you put something on. Seasons are just very organic, and the balance is incredibly important, and so it takes a lot of time.
Now, Barry, how often do you work with art song? Or, I just art song is just on the brain. I apologize. How often do you work with other presenting organizations across the country? You know, obviously, lots of people think of us as flyover territory. Do you have to consider, oh, somebody's in Chicago, so gosh, we have to put them on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. and hope people show up? Or, you know, do you call up, you know, Marna, can you make sure they have a layover in Minneapolis at 7 a.m. on, you know, we can do a coffee concert?
We have some of those conversations, not quite the way you described, right?
Okay, all right. I'm sure that's not how.
But it's, I mean, it's true that, you know, an artist will, and an ensemble, they want an itinerary. If they're on tour, they want one which makes a little bit of sense, and they hope that they don't go bouncing back from the West Coast to the East Coast to the West Coast.
And we hope that too, by the way.
Because they get lost in airports, or at least they used to do when airports were busy. Yeah. But, you know, one of the things for artists coming from Europe that I've successfully been very lucky with is that Minneapolis St. Paul has direct flights from Paris and London and Amsterdam. And so I've been able to persuade people to start their tour. So if they're on their way to the West Coast, fly into Minneapolis St. Paul first and take a day of rest. And then, you know, it's a little bit less of a jet lag. It's only 6 hours from
No, Barry, for those of us that don't know, London is where?
just east of New York. Keep going.
Just east, about as far east as California, right?
I think that's right. I think if you fly from London to New York, you're about halfway to San Francisco.
Well, I mean, it's amazing that you have, you know, one has to take into that consideration that artists, that rest and the artistic temperament. How does that, I mean, how often are you dealing, and you don't need to name names, we can bleep that out. But, you know, it's like, do people have those stipulations in their contract that they need so much rest, they need days to recover, they need time, they need trains only, you know, porters for their steamer trunks? Or cats?
I would say that in our line of business, and when I say our, I mean both me and Barry, who tend to traffic in recital and chamber music, that we tend to see musicians who are not amazingly demanding. I mean, I for the most part, I think the artists that we see are wonderful human beings, and you know, there's not a lot of that. I have the sense that maybe that exists in other parts of the field, or, you know, maybe in the rock world or something, but I think, you know, on balance, we don't see that so much. But, you know, routing and taking care of the musicians once they get to us is extraordinarily important. I mean, and I think, you know, if we're going to ask them to come and perform for our audiences and really put themselves out there and communicate something that's heartfelt and personal, and, you know, then I feel a real responsibility to make sure that everything that happens the minute they set foot in Princeton is like nothing that they have to worry about, you know. So I do think that first of all, the hospitality part is incredibly important, because it does have a bearing on how the performance comes out. And also I have to say that, you know, it's so easy to think that we're all kind of in our own silos. But they're the artists and they're the managers and they're the presenters, and we all have to work together. And when we talk about routing and things like that, it's really the manager's responsibility. And when it's done well, when an artist has an itinerary and it all works together and they're not driving all night to get to you, which has happened, I think, to Barry and I a lot, and they don't show up haggard or stressed out or whatever. And then
or hungry.
Or hungry.
Yeah. Always hungry. Always hungry. Have to have food in the dressing room.
You just want all the cylinders to fire the way they should.
Yeah, I would say I could count on one hand the number of occasions when I've felt like a performance has been below par because of tiredness. And I don't necessarily blame, as Marna says, don't blame the artists. They've probably had to do it and they've done their best. But everyone understands that it's a grueling thing to tour, and therefore it's all of our responsibilities to make sure it's as.
Have you ever just said, that's what you get? That's you chose this field, so boo-hoo.
You're trying to lead us somewhere. They are.
He's dating you, Barry.
Amazingly tolerant musicians on the road.
I think so too, and certainly, everybody knows that, and the managers, and I think people generally want everyone to succeed, and certainly want the reviews and the performances to be as legendary as, why else are you bringing these folks in? Marna, I didn't get, what's your concert series? What's the breadth and scope of your season?
It's actually pretty similar to the Schubert Club in a lot of ways. We have one primary venue. It has 850 seats. It's gorgeous. It's a really, really great space. It's one of actually the real pleasures of my job, to be able to bring musicians into a place that they love and they can speak in. And we present about 20 concerts a year. We have kind of a core series, the concert classic series. It's been there for 126 years. I think it's akin to, what do you call yours, Barry?
Our International Artist Series.
International Artist Series, yes.
That little thing.
That's 8 concerts. I think you're 5.
Five.
Yeah, I know Barry's series. And we have a lot of other series like Barry. We have kind of this thing that we call Performances Up Close, which is a lot more casual and completely changed up and geared sort of to a younger audience. And we do concerts for families, and we do a lot of education concerts. So all total, it's about 20 events a year, and it's amazing. Actually, I was thinking about it today. Barry and I have a lot in common in our work. Some things we don't intersect, but we have a. It's why we talk to each other on the phone.
You're both British.
I'm not putting on an accent.
And I'm trying to assimilate. Yeah, there's something called Chamber Music America conference every January in New York, and we make an effort. I think most years we've managed to get together in person and catch up. I have a huge amount of respect for Marna's taste and insights, and always look at her series and learn from who she's got and what's interesting, and I'm sure she does the same. So we and to be honest, I look at a lot of lists of what other presenters are doing, because that's how you see what's going on and what catches your eye.
I was going to ask about that kind of collaborative spirit amongst all of these different programs that exist. Do you ever say, oh, I can't program that person because this program just did that? Or do you not mind the Venn diagram of overlap of performers or themes or things?
Or is there also, Minnesota loves vocal music, so in choir and things of that nature. Is that different? That how does region and tastes and then trends affect your programming? And British sensibilities.
I mean, I think we all have our own idiosyncrasies, and we definitely have, whatever is our local or artists who have had relationships with the series for a long time. But truth be told, like, we couldn't do it without each other. I mean, there's exclusivity issues, if you're in a geographic area, and that's where I think, Heidi, your question comes in, and there are moments where it just is great if we look like we're our own restaurant, or but from Princeton to St. Paul, it shouldn't be that way. And there are moments I can think of artists right now that I wanted to bring, or Barry wants to bring, and we know that if we both do it, we're going to have a better shot at getting a European manager to say yes. So I think it's in our best interest, actually, to be talking to the people who are outside of our geographic area, and for the artists too.
Yeah. So I know, I mean, the New York metropolitan area has a lot of sort of competing, probably, programs. What about in Minnesota? Is that a similar kind of, I want to get so and so, and they're gonna, that kind of thing? I mean, I love that you guys are speaking collaboratively, because I think that's the only way for music and arts organizations.
I just had to say, I had to fend off at least a half dozen other arts organizations to get Barry on the show.
There was a duel.
I got him.
You got him.
I think one of the reasons I was so excited to come to the Schubert Club nearly 9 years ago now, was because it has this reputation locally and in the region for being the series where you can hear the great recitalists. And we're lucky that we really don't, in terms of recitals, we really don't have any other series, I don't want to say in competition, but who are also interested in setting up recitals. And it means that we have a wonderful following.
After tonight.
Aha. We do have a wonderful following, because there are people who I see at concerts, I used to see, and I hope I will see again, but who will say, oh, I remember seeing Cecilia Bartoli 15 years ago. I remember seeing, going further back than that. And it was all, these are recitals that the Schubert Club has presented, and it's not the only thing that Schubert Club does by any means, but it's probably the thing that is the highest profile part of it.
Well, and I tell stories of I remember in my formative years as a musician seeing those concerts, and I still tell the stories, being able to see Grace Bumbry, and I mean, I could go on and on. Yevgeny Kisin, these fantastic folks that are legendary, that are changed one's life to be able to see. And so yes, the Schubert Club legacy in Minnesota is important, and has remained a tradition for a lot of folks.
And long history. And actually, Marna and I were just trading notes earlier. We both have over 100 years of presenting concerts, which is both a great thing to celebrate, but it's also a little bit of responsibility to make sure on our watch that we continue to keep them at a high level.
Well, I was going to bring my next question, actually, because given that you're both each rooted in such a history of presenting, and obviously diversity in programming is a big issue right now. I mean, even at the education level where I teach, we're talking about how we're going to educate the next generation of musicians to think in terms of, women composers, minority composers, things like that. And I'm wondering how that fight, which I've seen in other, I'm saying combative words. I apologize for that. But that battle,
edit that all out. Don't worry.
The battle between bringing back the traditional things that some audience members are hungry for versus moving the art forward. And I think that dance is a tough one. And so I just sort of wondered what you each thought of that.
In terms of the art form, I think we have different series. And right now, I will not say that it wouldn't change at some point in the future. Right now, our recital series tends to be pretty traditional recital series, We have a chamber music series, Music in the Park series, which tends to be, well, less traditional. There's more variety there. But the series that Marna referred to earlier, which is our kind of informal series, our opportunity to be more stretching in terms of what we present and be more eclectic, is Schubert Club Mix, which we introduced about 8 years ago, I guess, and that's a place, I think, where we can and maybe we have a responsibility to push the envelope a little bit more and do different things and see what is out there. We're in a way, we're always responding to what's being made available. We're not, the Schubert Club is not very often a producer of programs, but as in the last few years, I've seen more and more opportunity to bring in different kinds of things, whether it's multimedia, whether it's stretching the repertoire, the way that artists present things, and that's our place. At least at the moment, that's been our place to present those kinds of concerts.
Yeah, I also have to say that I think a lot of it has to do with your relationship with your audience. I think trust is, really at the heart of everything that we do. And we've had organizations that have had trustive audiences for a long time, but it's also, I think, up to me and Barry as leaders of our organizations now to make sure that everything that we put out there feels in some way feels like a genuine piece of what the organization is. And I think then once you've got the trust of an audience, then you can take a lot of risks. And the best place I think you want to be is for an audience member to say, I don't know what I'm going to tonight, but whatever it is, I know it's going to be great because it's the Schubert Club, and I think what I've noticed is that, like, when I took over our version of the International Artist Series, our concert classic series, which was primarily string quartets. And there were a lot of audience members that had a very, very narrow definition of what chamber music was. And fortunately, we've been able to expand that, but it's taken they're trusting me and trusting the programming and doing it slowly and doing it carefully and doing it thoughtfully. I had presenters, I had subscribers in the first year that I was on the job saying, I'm going to give up my subscription if it's not all string quartets. That's all I'll go to. And now we do maybe 3 a year, but we do so much more than that. So I think some of it is, as Barry said, starting these new series and finding different ways of packaging it, or, reaching out to different kinds of audiences, making those kind of changes. But some of it is just getting the audience to trust you, just knowing that they're going to have that whatever you do, we've been able to present a bagpipe recital. I never thought we'd be able to do that, and people loved it. In fact, it's for me, one of the most memorable concerts we've presented. But that's because we worked really hard to make sure that people trust us.
Now, how long will it take to make, how long does that sort of trust take to gain? Is it a season? Is it a number of seasons? Is it putting in just the right thing that people will remember and talk about for all those years later? And they're like, okay, I'll trust Marna again, I guess.
I think it does take, I was surprised. I inherited a program that was not in great shape. It had been dwindling for a while, and we did not have a lot of subscribers. And I thought, okay, it's going to take 3 to 4 years. I knew it would come back because we're in a university community, and people are spongy and intellectually curious.
Well, and you gain inspiration every morning when you walk through the quad.
Oh, that too.
Remember every morning when you walk through the quad?
It diffuses into their skin. I am spongy and intellectual.
I was surprised at how quickly it did come back. I don't think it's time as much as it is consistency. And
so now what do we do now? So we can challenge audiences conceptually and different genres of music. Now, what about equity and hiring practices with regard to seeing BIPOC?
Can I say just one other thing before we move on to that?
Just one.
I have learned, I think I've learned that you can really trust audiences to know what the difference between what is really good and what is amazing. And
Sure.
you can't get away with too many goods, averages, before you lose their trust. But if on the other side, if you have some real wonderful experiences, the audience who's there really notices it, and somehow it gets out. I don't know whether it's because of what's written in the newspaper or whether it's because people talk to their friends, but I think it comes down to what happens on stage is how the trust builds.
I think also that what I was going to say to you, Barry, is that people also can see through a gimmick, and I think also newspapers don't always know what the hell they're talking about.
You can say that.
Are you at the same concert?
Yeah, I've had that happen too. The problem when all a performer's eggs are put into one reviewer's basket. I wish there were more diverse ways to.
We don't have any reviewers in Princeton, so.
Yeah.
Do you have a newspaper?
I'll be right there.
That's a little bit of a stretch, but not as many as there used to be. That's for sure.
So back to this day and age we're in now, where we are front and center about diversity. We can't ignore it any longer. What are we doing?
I mean, I think
that was sort of my question earlier too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we just talked about is buried in there and important, but this definitely feels like a different watershed moment. I mean, it doesn't feel like excellence is gonna cut it. It can't be the only thing. We can't hide behind that, and we've been talking about it. I guess that I do think that change is happening, and I see it everywhere. And in some ways, it's been really interesting. Hard that it happened now, because it's obviously life is so challenging. But I really do think that it's given so many people a chance to step back and quiet down and to really think and plan, and a kind of time that you never would have been given ever before we all had to be quarantined in this pandemic. So I don't know that there's one specific answer, but I guess that I want to believe that buried in all of our organizations, as we've just been talking about, are the tools that are required to combat racism, and that in some ways racism is a lack of empathy, and the arts are one of the best tools that we have to combat that. So I think what we do every day as presenters, the most important thing that we do every day, I think, is think continually about how we engage our audiences, how we create and cultivate connections, how we create a real sense of community, a sense of belonging, and help people try to make their own personally relevant connection to all of our presentations. So, we have to take those things that are fundamental level that we're set up to do and work a lot harder. And work a lot harder.
That's great. We had a viewer comment. They loved the phrase excellence isn't the only criteria. Thank you.
We're getting comments.
I think that was beautifully said, Marna. Can I just add that I think this point about working harder. I think the onus is on people like Marna and me to do more research, to dig deeper as to who's out there. Neither of us, well, I can speak for myself. I rarely call up an artist or a member of a quartet directly and say, hey, will you come and do a concert? It all goes through managements and agents. And I think that the whole classical music industry is waking up to the need, the opportunity to present way more diversity in terms of artistry. There are organizations like the amazing Sphinx organization, which started off as a competition, but now is really just giving amazing Latino and Black string instruments, and I think they're doing vocal programs.
Yes, they just finally start. That's on the go too. So,
but there are some great individual musicians and ensembles coming out of that program. So we're having, it to some extent, we're having the opportunity to listen to and to see and hear a lot more diversity than there was probably available on the menu of the artists and ensembles we were looking at.
It's front and center now from a management standpoint and from a audience standpoint too.
Yeah.
So,
and I know some even academic institutions are actually establishing a new position, right, for diversity in education. I'm just wondering if, especially when you have boards that may be old school, if there's someone to bring in some of these programs that can sort of, help the changing of the guard a little bit, because I think sometimes it's different when you have someone come in who can voice these things rather than. So I just wondered if any institutions you know of are sort of bringing someone on board. I know we did that at the conservatory they just put the chair and head of our department that's just going to talk about diversity and how to educate our children and things like that. So I'm just wondering if that's something that is being considered at these kinds of organizations as well.
Well, at the Schubert Club, we actually have an outside consultant at the moment who we're working with. So our diversity and inclusion committee identified the need to bring somebody in from the outside. It's not a permanent position, but she's working with us through December and really interesting conversations which are prompting the organization to think and I expect act differently. But maybe it would lead at some point. We're small in terms of administrative staff, so adding a position is not.
I'm sorry, Barry, did you just say lead?
You need a bell every time someone says ding, ding, ding.
It's the first time tonight.
And I spelt it in my head. I spelt it L-I-E-D. I promise. I promise.
Okay, listen, everyone. I just need to take a little break here. I'm parched. So no, actually, we just had this question today. I'm going to go to camera. Let's see here. I'm going to camera 1 here. So we had a question today, actually. Do we pay our guests? And I said no, but we always send them a little gift. We give them something, a token of our esteem. And I am taking you tonight into a Lead Society exclusive. Barry allowed us to show you what we gave him as a token of our appreciation for being on the show. So,
just wait, Marna.
Yeah, Marna?
I'm scared.
Co-host, Dave? What about co-host?
Just send your mailing address, Marna. All right. Okay, everyone, enjoy this segment that you can see our gift of appreciation to Barry Kempton. Oh, gosh. It's not playing. Oh, here we go, folks. Okay. All right. This is what you get for going live, folks. Okay. You guys talk amongst yourselves for a second while I find this video.
I'm so curious.
Get back to the hard-hitting questions for a second.
I was going to say, we were right in the thick.
Well, I was going to say that you can see the collaboration.
So here we are at Executive Director of the Schubert Club, Barry Kempton's home. He's British, And so, like every British person, I'm sure he loves the crumpet. So I went ahead and got him some crumpets. Let's go see if he likes crumpets. Safe distancing. Well, if it is Schubert Club Executive Director
Hello, Abe.
and Administrative Director Barry Kempton. Hello, Barry.
Hello, Abe.
Now,
Good to see you.
you're going to be on the show on Saturday, tomorrow, and I thought I would surprise you with, and Bear gets a little early. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're British.
I am British.
So like every good British citizen, I think I got you something there that you may enjoy. Show our viewing audience what it is.
It's crumpets. But it's not only crumpets. It's more crumpets.
No, I just assumed that you go through about a package of these a day as a British person, so I wanted to get you a week's supply of crumpets.
More crumpets. Oh wow.
Ah,
More crumpets.
oh, I think I only got you a weekday supply of crumpets.
Nope.
Weekend too?
Some for the weekend.
Oh yes. Now I want to draw your attention to one very important thing on these crumpets is that they, I believe, if you can get in on that, made in the USA. So,
American crumpets.
yeah, thank you. Barry, I hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to talking with you tomorrow.
Wonderful.
I love crumpets. This many crumpets?
All right, you guys got a little.
Jealous.
That's what we do.
Am I getting apple pie?
I thought I would get you some seltzer.
Oh God. Okay, great.
That's brilliant. Oh, she's from New Jersey. You got a whole wide array of things you can choose from.
Corn.
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen recording. I don't know.
Oh,
Potatoes.
Abe might show up at your door as well and present it to
I
you.
hope he does. I like your T-shirt.
Yeah.
I can get you. I can get you as many of these as you want.
That was great. I love that.
That was fun. That was a really, and truly, I had the question like, what do you do for these guests? I'm like, I do a little research. You know, I had to do a lot of digging in Barry's case, to find out.
Nowhere on my biography does it say that I like crumpets, but I do like crumpets.
Have you had one yet? And what did you put on it?
Yes, toasted it because it has to be hot and get crispy, and then you have to slather it in butter.
Yeah. Okay.
You heard it here first, folks.
Oh. Do they have clotted cream here? Is that something you put on? I remember hearing that.
Clotted cream goes on scones.
See, I
Come
don't
on,
think my
Heidi.
carbo-
If you're a traditionalist, I guess you could put it wherever you want.
This is a family show, Barry. All right, what do we want to talk about in our last few minutes? Have we wasted enough of your time tonight?
Talk about the family show. I do have a question about the education outreach.
Very good.
Of your organizations do that, because I do feel, every time, people talk about the art is dying or how are we going to move it forward, or gosh, I've been a real downer this time, haven't I?
Yes.
But I mean, I feel like that is where we're going to see the change, right? It's the next generation of audience members. It's the next generation of musicians. And so I feel like that's where we can get really creative. And so I always wonder what arts organizations do in that regard.
Marna, you want to start?
Well, I'm first of all, I'm going to say, I hope this isn't controversial, but I'm going to say, I don't really believe that audiences are dying. So
Yay.
I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to put that out there.
I think that's
Okay,
great.
I'm cutting to the crumpet footage again.
I love that. And then we all need your secret, for those who struggle to keep the audience building up. I think that may be the key, right?
I mean, look, actually, let me correct myself. I don't believe in the graying of audiences. I don't think that our audiences are all so gray and so old that they're going to be dying off in next year or 2 years from now. None of us are going to have audiences, because people have been saying that for years and years and years. And for whatever reason, I've spent a long time thinking about this. The art form that we care about and love and are passionate about seems to be something that, for the most part, people matriculate into later in life. I don't know what that's about. Like, they've had their kids, they've had their careers, their life outlook changes.
Menopause.
Got more menopause. That's not to say, though, that we don't have a crisis, and that kids cannot go to school anymore and get introduced to instruments and learn, and they don't get exposed to these things. We absolutely do. And of course we would have bigger and broader and I think more diverse audiences if every single child had a proper music. I mean, if the arts were something that was valued. So I guess I'm refining that statement, because the other thing I think is that and I feel kind of embarrassed to say this, but I do believe that the traditional format of our concerts is a little out of step with contemporary life now. I think it is not relevant to many, 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 many people. And I as much as I'm loath to admit that, classical music is behind in that way, and figuring out how to connect to younger audiences. So I'm sorry, I'm not really answering your education question.
Oh.
Yeah, it's more to dialogue.
But I spent a lot of time, because I'm at a university, thinking about the 4 years that our students are in college. Like, I spend more time thinking about that age than I do younger, although we do have programs in the local schools and programs for families, and thinking about how to make what we do relevant to those college kids for the 4 years that they're there is an incredible challenge. But at the same time, it's amazing to be in a place where kids, I always say that, and I get corrected, I'm not allowed to call them kids. Young adults. Young adults. They're there to learn, and they're spongy, and they're actually really curious, and they're willing to try things. It's just competing for their time and trying to figure out how you tell them that it's worth putting down a bio, studying in the library, or going to a party to come and try us out. And we've come up with a lot of really great solutions, but it does require a tremendous amount of creativity.
So, Marna,
I would bring flashcards to concerts at Oberlin, like organic chemistry flashcards. I have this vivid memory of the Cleveland Orchestra being in Finney Hall and me with my organic chemistry flashcards. So you could have an event that said, bring your flashcards and
bring your homework.
Just as an aside, and I don't want to take Barry, you should answer that question too, but I think one of the most potent things that we've done and most successful is that we started something called the Creative Reactions Contest, and it's a creative writing contest, and really the only rule of the contest is that you have to use one of our events as your source of inspiration. It's actually, now it's moved into the visual arts too. So students come into the concert hall with a very, very personal way of relating to the music. They're going to turn it into an essay, they're going to turn it into a poem, they're going to turn it into a painting. And we have learned a ton about what gets expressed from those moments. But I also think what we've seen is that students come because, well, they win money to do it, and also they're ambitious and they're curious. They're all engaged in different ways of expressing themselves, and they think they can do that. And so they're not really thinking about the music that's the reason that they're coming. And we see a lot of students who have never been to a concert before, and they write about, you know, things that I never notice in the concert hall anymore. I mean, I've just, you know, I've got blinders on at this point. They write about funny things, the way, you know, people dress or look, or the way the chairs feel, or, you know, that the way the ceiling looks, but you really get a sense of what they're thinking. And I think it's been hugely successful. I mean, our like some of our most heartwarming stories are students who really have never set foot in the concert hall and then keep in touch with us and continue to go. So
that's great. I love that idea.
Took too much time on that answer. Sorry.
Well, Barry, sorry, we're out of time for tonight.
Sorry, Barry.
Barry, we have just enough time to watch the crumpet bit again.
It might be more interesting than what I have to say.
In slow motion.
No, I would just add, I mean, Schubert Club, we do some family concerts, or when times were normal, we did family concerts, and actually some sensory-friendly family concerts for families with kids on the autism spectrum. But if I just had a few moments to talk about a couple of our other programs, we have a Project Cheer, a program called Project Cheer, which has been going for 51 years now. It's a program of free piano and guitar lessons. It takes place in the St. Paul neighborhood, Rondo neighborhood, which is a traditionally African-American neighborhood, and is based in the community center there, and has had pretty consistently about 100 kids participating for as long as I know, and maybe it wasn't quite 100 at the very beginning, but it's been a really strong neighborhood program of learning, you know, the early lessons of getting introduced to sitting at a piano and playing a piano, getting a guitar in your hands and playing. Now, we don't claim to bring them onto you know, academy level, but it's an opportunity to get started, and then if kids really get into it, we can steer them onto other programs which maybe give them a bit more exposure. So that's one program that I'm very, very proud of because of its longevity and the way it's kept going. My very resourceful and smart education director, when she came about 8 years ago, she introduced a different kind of program to the concert, which she really wanted to be more of a workshop experience, and we called it in the end Kids Jam. And the elements of it are play, listen, learn, and create. And you know, we work with teaching artists, and there is an element of being performed at, but an important piece of it is to be active in a workshop type setting, and to, you know, maybe make an instrument, or maybe learn a particular dance that goes with Indian music, or whatever it might be. And that has been very successful. We do that for homeschool groups. We take it into schools, and we take it into some community centers as well. And it's been, so those are some of the examples.
And what about getting kids into the concert hall, or schools, things, or people coming to dress rehearsals? How are we exposing them to, we talked, Marna, I think you mentioned it's just hard for young adults these days to feel connected, and you know, it's like it's hard to commit. Even I feel like, oh my gosh, 2 hours at the symphony, I need to get to bed.
And attention spans too. I mean, we know that's
how do we start at an earlier age with that, or is that done? Are we resolved to have shorter concerts or different elements of concerts to maintain an attention, or do we just need mothers and fathers and families and parents to say, when you're at the symphony, you will just look up and smile for 2 hours?
I don't have any rules. I mean, I think that's part of the problem, right? I mean, kids that are growing up now, they're so used to interactivity. They're so used to things in small bites. You know, they're used to all of these arts reimagining themselves. I mean, look at Hamilton, or look at, all the amazing things that go on in the theater. We got Hamlet reimagined on space or whatever, and classical music, it's hard to do that. And I just think we have to find a way for people to make their own personal connections, and whether it's 2 hours or 1 hour or 5 minutes. I think we all believe that the art form itself is fine and inspirational and amazing, and if someone gets exposed and it touches them, it's not going to touch everybody. Like, we all know it's a niche-y thing.
Well, I like what you said earlier when you were talking about that we don't see the audience as graying like we thought we would. All of a sudden but
And they're gray.
yeah, I mean, certainly. But that's de rigueur now. I mean,
well, I remember hearing people saying when I was in college, classical art. And it's just it's this mantra that I think there was this great line that, the more you say something, then you're just giving it validation. And I feel like that mantra has been said over and over again, and it hasn't happened yet. So I feel like we need to maybe spin it in a different way.
Or are we still waiting? Are they just living longer than we thought?
No.
It is something that everybody notices. I mean, if you put anyone of any age into a concert hall, the first thing they would notice is that the audiences seem older.
Right. And maybe we're just all aging into it. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I was the youngest one there, and they'd be like, "Oh, did your mommy or daddy bring you?" I said, "No."
No, I'm 26.
My dad liked Pink Floyd, and I made him take me to a Met Opera production.
Although, my dad loves music. We went to lots of concerts and stuff. But it's interesting to see now. Just are we grasping at straws, trying to pick things to have or do we just focus on the legend? Do we, my God. I think about just recently, I think last year I got to hear Itzhak Perlman play at Chicago Symphony. How exciting! And I was so excited I would have been excited about that at 12 or however old I am now.
Well, what bothers me too is that every other art form that has excellence has longevity. We don't go and look at a Picasso in a museum and say, no more of that crap, or, read a great piece of literature. But there's something about the temporal aspect to what you have to do to invest in this that I think for some reason has a different standard. And I don't know. I feel like that the excellence in the art form should be enough. That's just my...
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, because I too strongly believe in if we deliver quality, and we know there's great musicians out there that people will always be interested, and yet the moment we're complacent is the moment that things will start going wrong. So I think I've always felt like it's an annoying question, but it's a valid question, and we should keep making sure that we're mindful of what we need to do to make sure it is what we're doing is relevant and is enjoyable and is engaging people. Because if we ever get to the point where we're saying, oh, it's their fault, they don't appreciate what amazing music this
Those
is.
Fools.
Then we've
Those
lost
damn fools. That's me every...
That's why we need...
I say that every night before I go to bed, those damn fools.
I think that's why we need to keep a sense of vibrancy and risk and surprise. Like, it's one thing to walk into a concert hall and see an older crowd, but it's another thing to walk in there and feel like it's dead, right? They're really, you have to surprise even the people who know exactly what to expect. You have to stay alive.
Well, and one can do that by way of, in the guest artists you bring in, whether it's a legend or a young the most exciting person on the scene, right? I mean,
yeah.
You can hear an 80-year-old play just as intensely as a young phenom, and it's exciting for the audience.
Yeah. Although I will say, Abe, you talk about going to hear Itzhak Perlman. I mean, the other thing we don't have very many legends. I mean, it used to be that, there was a ton, right? Especially in the singer field.
Yes.
Last year, did you see that movie, the Pavarotti movie?
Hmm.
So incredible. I absolutely loved it. But I was just reminded, it was like, well, we just don't have anybody like that anymore.
Well, the legends of it depends on the genre, but the last of the greats, as one would say, are far and few between now. So we're at the next generation, and then so yeah, it is interesting too.
I just wonder who moves into that, or what's the next opening. I mean, it doesn't feel like that exists, that role exists anymore.
Someone who we just had back in December, Sheku Mason. He has, I don't want to put the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he has the potential to become one of those legends. And there was the excitement in the room, the excitement in the hall when he played on that stage with his sister Isata was just fantastic.
But he has like 40 to 50 years before he reaches that echelon of legend.
He should enjoy the ride because
that was an amazing concert.
I think training's a part of it too. I think there's been this kind of factory approach to training musicians for a long time. And with singers, it's interesting. There's been a study that the vibrato rate has changed from old times to now significantly. And we were talking about travel earlier, that in the past, these great singers would sing, they'd have to take a boat, they'd get 3 weeks off. And so it's actually self-selecting for thicker, hardier instruments that have a slower vibrato rate, because it's just such a grueling expectation of what is demanded on these singers. It's a theory. They still don't know if it's an aesthetic thing, but they've done tests, and the vibrato rate has changed dramatically in terms of who's famous now versus who was famous even 50 years ago.
Well, post a link to that on our this.
Oh yes,
feed. That's fascinating. Because singers have the shortest longevity of any musician.
But everyone talks about there's the greats, right? There's not that one person that's just. And I do think scheduling is a part of it. It's just they're asking to do so many roles and so many recitals, and it's really hard on the voice and the body and the artist, I think.
Maybe the record companies as well have, you used to go into a record store and you would see these huge, great big posters of who these, the big artists were who had released a recording, and it doesn't work that way anymore. You don't go into a record store.
You don't have to wait. Everything's done. It's immediate gratification for everything now. And that brings me to my next question: is what are we doing now when people want? We can bring this twofold. We can address the graying population who may not be as technically savvy as the rest of us, and we're all virtual for our seasons. Perhaps, I don't know what you guys are doing. And then two, what is that the wave of the future? How long do you think this is? I mean, we're just speculating here. So
what's the question?
There is no question.
What's going to happen next season?
What are we doing? What are we doing?
We're going to make an announcement next week, so I need to be a little circumspect in what I say. So we have artists and ensembles coming, and we are preparing to share the concerts online. I mean, I think how many audience members will be allowed to be in a hall in September, and how many will be allowed to be in the hall next March, April, May. It just is an unknown number, so we have to be prepared.
How about I propose a firm question then for both of you? What if for the next 2 seasons we're unable to perform live and in person with an audience that is beyond the people that can afford the handful of seats that would be available? What do we do?
Yeah. What do we do? Can you tell us? I'm just kidding.
Hold on. I can have a seance.
We've just been sitting around thinking about that for months. I mean, I do think that we have to find a way to bring the qualities and the value of what we do live somehow into other realms, whether that's virtual. I mean, one of the things that we're exploring a lot are virtual residencies. It seems like a real opportunity to get to know artists in a completely different way, to get to know them behind the scenes, to know what they care about besides just music, what their other pursuits are. It also seems like a great opportunity to let audiences in on the process. I think, we started to think about like works that we've commissioned. Could we, let audiences see that from the very beginning? Like, I don't think, no, they never get to know, like, where did the germ of the idea come from, and what happens when a composer puts pen to paper, and, do they work with musicians? When do they come in? So I think there are kind of some ways of thinking about it that could exist even once we come back live. I would like to think that these are enhancements that could continue to enhance the process, going forward. But, it does, like a virtual concert's not going to, I don't think anybody's going to argue it's going to replace the live.
Well,
and we can actually hope that in a sense it doesn't replace the live event. Because if it did, we would be in bigger trouble. I think what we're doing is an interim measure to do as well as we can in the circumstance and respect everybody's safety. But one day I ran into some people just a couple of days ago, just saying we can't wait for the day we can come back to the hall.
What if this is the thing that saves classical music from the gray hairs, though?
No, everyone, because
like, what if all the young people are watching this and they get interested because
I think that's fascinating. I mean, I do think there's all these people who won't come into the concert hall for the reasons we're talking about and matriculate in later, but are perfectly comfortable to be able to be texting and watching a concert, or letting your 3-year-old run around in the background and watching a concert, and maybe they'll get turned on. That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do go back in the concert hall, if the older audience is surrounded by younger people, the older audience is going to feel great about it, because people worry about, where are the young people around me, and I think
no, it was I remember those days, and I still I'm still one of the younger people in the concert halls, and I love it.
Keep on coming, keep on attending.
Well, I will, and and I just think that it's amazing that generation of concert hall goers is still fighting they welcome you with open arms. They want you to be there too.
I think that's like a little bit of a misconception that that older folks just want it the way they do now.
No
one is more grateful than they are they care about it. They want to pass it on to the next generation. They love to see younger people who are interested in what they are.
Well, it's just been an absolute pleasure to talk to both of you tonight. We could, I'm sure, talk all night. Any parting words for our audience, or any shout outs that you would like to make while I play our little outro music?
Well, I would shout out for you, Abe, and the Lead Society, because it's impressive what you've got started, and been fun to be part of this. So thank you to you and Heidi for making this such a fun.
As I said, he just picked me up on the side of it.
Well, thank you for picking me up too. I have to say, I have a little bit of St. Paul, Minneapolis envy. It's an amazing cultural city, and it's been great to drop in and be a little part of it for an hour.
And we need your voices and everything you do behind the scenes. It's just you're sort of the umbrella of it all that makes it possible.
And Marna, expect a truckload of seltzer tomorrow.
Oh gosh. Okay, I can't wait.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.